couple of things.
Cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cold. Yeah. Yeah.
They changed their plan the morning of the dive. They had all their gases sorted on the Thursday.
Yep.
But the morning of the dive, they changed their dive plan, retested their gases. And for anybody who's done deep diving, that's not a sort of simple on the run type of thing you do.
I think bringing us back to a very VSAG specific scenario, one thing I find comes up a lot is time pressure to hit a mark in Port Phillip heads. It really gets that time element. It's so, you've got to make sure your divers are ready, and I mean ready to jump in the water on your time mark. If you're waiting for the little float to pop up to the surface, and I find that adds a level of difficulty that there's always that raised pressure when we get to that point of get in the water now. And if one person's just not quite ready and like they've just forgotten one little thing, circle back with the boat because one diver's already in the water and you've got a bit of current still flowing. That diver is now swimming into the current to hold themselves because you just thought, oh, it's slow enough now, we can do it if we all roll in together, but one person misses it. Now there's pressure on the diver that's in the water. There's pressure on the person that's floundering to get ready. And so I see that as one of those common Swiss cheese things, that an element of complication that I frequently come up against in my boat.
And I think one of the big one there is the miscommunication. People don't speak up and they don't try to coordinate, although you have a little bit of coordinations, but just making sure that everybody is on the same page. Having that chat, prior going in the water about what we expect, where we're going, how we're getting in, how we're coming back, kind of just clarify that every time.
Even things as simple as hand signals.
Yeah.
Everyone assumes that communication is common, but I've had instances where something I've been doing and worked all the time it's like a foreign language for somebody else. Just before you go in, okay, how do you signal 120 bar? Like, is it going to be that, or is it?
And I think we find that with the peers. Like I find peer complacency a huge factor in Melbourne diving, that we will go in with buddies. I had a situation just a couple of weeks ago where I didn't know the third person, but I knew the middle person. One person had got out, 45 minutes I was on top of the thing yelling out her name because we couldn't find her. She'd got out and she'd gone home, but there was no communication to say she's gone home. And it's like, that's just peer complacency in my head. Not good enough, yeah.
Yeah, prior to the dive the other day with Elodie and Sharky, Elodie made a special point to explain, I'm going to have a camera in one hand all the time, so I need to refresh my single-handed signals. And I thought that was really good because you normally expect your other divers is going to use two hands to signal all the time, but I thought that was a really good thing to do prior to the dive, so you're expecting single-handed.
And she made it very clear, I'll be holding the camera. And so we agreed, look, you'll be tasked with your camera. I'm going to shoot the SMB to make it easier on you. She was like, yeah, that's cool, actually.
Yeah.
Help me out. Because obviously don't want to drop your camera. I didn't do that.
Exactly. Don't want to throw it away that bit.
Which has happened a few times. So yeah, like going through, especially with people who haven't dived. Obviously, the other day was the first time I dived with you guys. And so you have a different way of diving, different way of like signaling, different way of like handling the boat and all that sort of jazz. So it was first time for me, just sitting there like asking like, what should I do? Do I do this? Do I do that? How do you guys do it? Like kind of like learn how you do it. Doesn't matter what I know, it's always matters like how you guys do it and what you're comfortable with. Because you chill ball, you drive the boat, and it's like the captain ready. That's what I always say to people and students, like I can brief him to dive, but whatever the captain says, that's what goes. I might say we're going to jump and do a dive, and the captain says, no, we're not doing that, period. And we move on. So, yeah.
Has anyone called a dive off recently or not called a dive off that they think perhaps they should have, like maybe go to Hogan Island? Sorry to rub salt in the wound, Stewie.
I had a dive where my computer stuffed up, but then I just indicated that and stuff, but I just stayed with the person I was with, so I think it's pretty safe as long as I stay at the same
Yep.
level as that person.
Was that on a multiple dive trip?
I think we just doing 2 nights, but we're doing 2 nights on that day.
In Melbourne, so it wasn't on.
No,
It's a bit different
Liverpool,
from Liverpool,
Yeah,
because you
Liverpool.
can't trust
That's
other
right,
other
that's right,
person's
that's,
computer's got the same issue.
that's right.
Yeah, and I called a dive early the other week when it's been cold. Yeah.
Well, we did on Saturday because we lost Elodie and that was the right thing. We couldn't find her for a couple of minutes, and so we looked with Buddy for a minute or two, and then surfaced, and then we found her.
And
So.
she hadn't moved from where she went in, because she was still tucked back.
She was still glued to the same octopus.
It's actually, she pulled out her SMB, so she did the right thing, but her line was tangled, so it took her a minute to untangle it. And then she shot the SMB, but it was still under the water. So it was hard for us to see.
Yeah, we had a lot of trouble. We got a glimpse of her SMB just below the surface in the distance, and then we lost it again.
So was that a short?
She only got like
Lead on
maybe
it?
8 meters of line,
Okay.
but those 8 meters, maybe only 4 meters usable because the red was tangled, like one big knot. And she was struggling to undo the knot underwater. And as we all know, it's really hard to do that. So she shot it, but I guess there wasn't really enough gas in it as well. So it was on the surface next time it was under the water. So it was so hard. The 3 of us were looking at it and then it just disappears and then it reappears. So it was hard
it took 3 of us to locate it in the distance. And the other thing I've noticed is this time of year the sun's much lower for a lot of our dives, and that's making it hard seeing anything on the surface.
So if you're gonna buy an SMB, buy a big one.
Yeah.
It was a big SMB, just short line, and how big was tangled, so that didn't help.
Yeah, she was trying to sort that out and do a safety at the same time.
Yeah.
Tangled in the camera or separately?
No, actually, it was because she,
Off the spool, off the spool.
yeah, she didn't have a spool actually. It was just line and a few weights at the end of it, like I think sinkers, like fishing sinkers or whatever. And so the 3 of them, and I think they somehow got tangled because it sits in the pouch, rolled with the line, and she pulled it out and it was just a mess. And then she shot it just with only maybe 3-4 meters of line. I reckon just enough to do the safety stop, but obviously you didn't have the time to undo the knot. And it's so hard on the water to undo knots, and like everything gets much harder.
Hopefully she invests in a real one.
That's what I said. Do you typically dive? And she goes, actually, I'm not a boat diver. I typically dive on the piers, like what she said, and I don't really SMB that often.
No.
And I always say, like, you need at least, in my opinion, if you do Melbourne diving, 20 to 30 meters of line, because you do wall dive and you shoot off top of the wall, you need at least 20 meters of line. So 30 ideally to be able to shoot an SMB. Because they said these small spools with only 12, you may not be able to do that. And if there is strong current, you got to be able to shoot from your deepest depth. And if you're a deep diver, you should have at least 30 meters of line. That's my opinion. I've shot an SMB from 60 to 70 meters just because I had to before leaving the wreck. Should have SMB shot the boat because I couldn't make it to the shot line. And so it's a lot of line, but it lets the boat know I'm there and they follow me. So in my opinion, whatever you certify to, whatever depth, that's how much line you should have with maybe 5 meters extra, just in case.
One more thing on SMBs. Last weekend, the company formerly known as Red Boats, whoever that is now, they had divers spread for more than a kilometre. So we were going up from the heads, we're heading towards Pope's Eye, driving into the northeastern sun because it was still morning, maybe 10 o'clock. And in the sun, I could not see a bright pink SMB above the surface until we passed it. And I glanced around behind me and I saw talking to someone behind me. I'm like, did you see that? And
I didn't see it either. Like on the way, like had no idea it was an SMB. We passed it and they realized it was a small SMB, by the way.
yeah.
But pink, you would think it's a bright color, quite visible, but it's not. Especially
Well, going into the sun, we must have gone within 50 meters of this diver at 25 knots. So imagine the diver being under that, hearing this boat zooming overhead and that. So anyway, be aware of the charter boat spreading out. And the other thing that happened, same day, another charter boat came up and dropped 22 divers on top of my divers.
Oh.
On my mate. They put their mark on my anchor. And then 22 divers on top of my divers. So anyway, I think that's a digression, but I just wanted to mention it while we,
Was that the other charter boat?
that was the
Yeah.
scuba
I think that-
boat.
Or Bay City.
No,
We met them out at South Channel one day and they had two boats out there that was bonded with divers, but they sort of created a bit of space for me to come in when they knew the divers had moved away, so they come in quietly, so pleased with that.
Okay, can anyone recall a dive that they didn't call off that they, in hindsight, wish they had?
yeah, when I got hypothermia last year.
Well, even getting
Yeah.
back in for a second dive if you're in a wetsuit. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a factor, isn't it?
It was a learning lesson,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're distracted by the cold and.
Yeah. and it came on really quickly.
Any comments online on this? Okay. List some things that you thought about after a dive that concerned you on a dive, that made you think that was close.
You know, I had one on Coogee where I should have popped the SMB and didn't, and I heard the boat just go over the top of my head when we were on the safety stop.
Yep.
So, you know, you get a bit complacent. I mean, my main springs, I'll be okay, and oh, she just drove over me.
Mm. Yeah. I saw one of the student divers make an emergency ascent when we had the 22 divers drop on top of ours, and I saw her come up fist first, and I thought that was good
Yeah,
because
that's
she
right.
knows that they've been dumped next to me.
Yeah.
At least she's got a hand above her head. Yeah. All right. Well, I think is there more comments anyone else would like to add to this before we return to our general discussions?
Yeah, just, well, as part of the general discussion. Recently, VSEG organised a dive to the graveyard, which we didn't actually do. But it was a 45 metre dive.
Yep.
And there are a number of members who weren't certified to that level.
Mm.
And that comes back to what you don't know.
Yep.
About diving to that level. In the discussions on that trip, a number of people suggested we get someone to come and talk about the advantages of doing an advanced nitrox.
Yep.
Course, and that sort of thing. I've spoken to Mark Ryan, who's happy to do it.
Okay.
It's just a matter of whether you want to just part of this or part of the club.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, Terry was expressing a lot of keen interest because, like, she's always got knocks, and she's like, "Well, why can't you come down and dive with me longer?" You know, because we're missing out on a lot of bottom time without knocks.
Yeah,
on a 35 metre dive, you're missing a lot of bottom time.
yeah.
Oh,
On a 40 metre dive, you're missing the safety stops and stuff.
Yeah.
But to do that, you need to know the ramifications of using high percentage oxygen.
So you're talking about advanced knocks as opposed to your basic knocks. Is
Yes.
that just
Yeah.
to distinguish? Yep.
Advanced takes you 40 metres plus a spare bowl.
It's usually combined, so you don't typically do advanced nitrox on its own. It's usually combined with decompression procedures course, or we typically do it as a package. And so you get to learn how to do a 45 minute dive and you use advanced nitrox. Like you can do them separate, of course, but for the most part, especially in Victoria and Melbourne, like it's combined together, like two courses in one. And then you do your 45 minute ticket plus your advanced nitrox because they complement each other. It's actually really hard decompressing on 40 mix. What you find is like above 50, it's just like 50 is a magical number. It's and then you have to do advanced nitrox, and it complements 45 minute decompression diving. So what people tend to do is like both together. And it works really well from dive shop point of view and from diver point of view, because then you walk out of this course, you've had done two courses, you get two certs, and you know how to pull off like decompression dives. You know, because if you only do advanced nitrox, Yes, you can do a 50 mix on a 40-meter dive. It's going to slightly extend your bottom time, but you're still not allowed to go in decompression.
Yep.
Like you're still breaking the rules. And like if you're the captain on the boat, why do you let your divers do a deco dive, but they're not certified decompression divers as such? So, and as you know, India, like clock tick is very quick, like 40 minutes. I guess, what was it? I'm not guessing, actually, pretty sure it's 8 to 9 minutes on air, and 28 mix giving me what, another 3-4 minutes or so? Yeah, before until you get in deco. And so, yeah, it's a very fine point there.
Yeah, I think there's enough interest in the club that we pursue that.
Yeah, so he's happy to do it, just need to
Yeah,
get in touch with him and,
Yeah.
organise a date.
Yeah, and there
Yeah.
were some suggestions to run a workshop, just, you know, as a getting people to hear about it and to understand the requirements and what they need to get going for that. So we could do it as part of the workshop and maybe followed by a talk.
yep. On that subject, Sandrine, do you want to talk about what we've got coming up in workshop sessions?
Yeah, well, there was a few topics that were suggested. And one of them was, I'm just looking at my list, use and advantages of nitrox. Another one was about dive computers, rebreathers, technology and use as well. A big one on equipment and configuration. So that was some ideas that were floated. So I think if another one was also around debrief after the dives, you know, kind of coming to the workshop and concentrating on the next dive that we're going to do and really write it down, what we think went well, what we think didn't go so well, what did we learn. I wrote a little article in the Fathoms about dive retrospective, so that's another topic as well.
Just something to extend on the idea of tonight's presentation, looking at that video, maybe we should also start logging near misses and incidents more rigorously, and reporting them back to John Olden's our safety officer. Maybe we need to get more referrals back to him if we slip an email or a text or something every time just anything of concern comes up. We start analysing a bit more rigorously, because Gareth was saying there's not enough of that in the industry, and maybe that's one thing we can improve on.
It's a valid point, yeah.
And maybe we could just, sorry,
freedoms to some extent, but it's part of trying to learn and improve, isn't it? So it makes sense.
Well, safety in diving is our motto, so if people don't like our safety things, and you know, yeah,
That's right.
And it's
Yeah.
voluntary.
Yeah,
If they tell you about it,
yeah, that's
if they don't want it, they won't.
yeah,
So,
yeah, another little dark secret.
and now that
I
we don't
quoted you
have
on that
the,
earlier.
now that we don't have the wooden weight belt,
Yeah.
they're not in here.
Your hand up, is it, Stu?
It is, Andrew, and thanks for that great segue. After Matthias and I undertook the human factors in diving course with Gareth online, we got rid of the wooden weight belt, because the whole idea of making fun of someone that's made a mistake suppresses any feedback you get from any issue. You've got to just have what he calls a just culture, and one that says, okay, we made a mistake. It's not a blame, it's not a laugh at it. It's a have a look at it. What happened? Why did this happen? And how do we stop it next time? So hence no wooden weight belt. It's more about coming up, and as Gareth said, look, you come out of so many dives where little things go wrong and no one talks about it. You come out and say, oh, we're all alive. What a great dive. But you were one little disc on the Swiss cheese model from everything going to hell. So it is just open and honest assessment of what's happened.
And you have to create that environment as well. So it's not as simple as like, all right, what did go wrong on this dive? You have to create an environment like, all right, guys, it was a good dive. What did you enjoy about this dive? And what do you reckon you can improve on the next one? And then people open up sort of thing and they go, oh, actually, I wish I had more line mates than me, for example. So that's actually spot on. Like, need to be very sort of like
Encourage.
exactly encourage people to share. Like I shared with you on like the other day, like I had a couple of times skin bands, and like I shared the circumstances around it, what I think I did wrong and what I think I should improve. Like people should feel comfortable. If they don't, they're not gonna say anything. They're gonna have their dirty little secret, like I did it this time. I had skin bands, and so you don't want that. And as a club, you guys, I guess you want to be safe and you want to dive more and you want to trust, like really the people you dive with and like your dive buddies in particular.
Well, it's all about continuous improvement.
Exactly. Yeah. We all make mistakes. Let's be honest with it. We all make mistakes, and it's just a matter of time. It's just what you do after you've made a mistake. Do you learn from it, or do you keep doing the same thing? You know, I think that's the key.
maybe
Sorry.
go ahead, Sandra.
Yeah, in software engineering, there is a couple of techniques that we use to kind of we call that retrospectives, and we have kind of some very simple framework. One very simple framework is, you know, at the end of the 2-week periods or whatever, and we could do that at the end of every diet, is what do we stop, what do we continue doing, and what do we start doing? Or there is also the one that I used in the little article I wrote was, what did we like about the dive, what did we learn, and what lacked, and what did we long for? So I think that's quite a good little framework to talk about what happened. And I'll be happy to create a little form that we can put on our website. And when people who want to enter feedback, it can be also anonymous about their dives. They can just, you know, typing and answer a couple of questions, very simple form, just to kind of gather information from people and then have something to get back to the group and discuss as well.
I was thinking about doing some task loading onto John Oldham. just running up the flagpole. But if we text or email John at the end of every dive trip, any little things that come up, then maybe he could write in a Fathoms article just a summary of the thing, or without names, just a summary of all the things that have occurred in the last period.
Yeah, and I think Sandrine's idea of some form of model that people use is
Yep.
a good one. Just that just makes it a bit more.
Yes, a
makes it simple for people.
pro forma, and then just give us a summary of give us a summary of what's happening within the club, and then that might even highlight other training needs we have if we see it come through.
I'm not filling out my own form.
But how do you get this information from the boat captains, or how do you guys think about, like, because then you have to get the divers, like what you said before, get the divers to actually say, all right, well, I did this wrong, and next time I want to improve that. I guess this is the first step, really. And it can be just a simple question. All right, everyone, after you dive, what did you enjoy the most, and what do you think you should improve with the next one? Because if you don't get this, you can't pass on this information to it.
Yeah, it has to be a habit that we form on the way back to the boat ramp.
Yeah.
But not even for boat dives, shore dives. A lot of the club just meet. I'm meeting a few tomorrow morning for a shore dive. Should be the same thing. On your way back down the jetty.
Yeah, just like that. Just debrief, you know, dive debrief, or you do the 2 dives. What I find though is people get emotional for the most part, and that's the worst time to talk about the issues, right? You have to settle. Don't talk about it. Like, we all have problems with our buddies, okay? And what I believe is get back on the boat, take off your gear, chill. All right, don't talk about it. All right, chill, take your breath, because if you start arguing straight, I've heard of people driving off, leaving their buddy in the water. That's the worst thing you can do, in my opinion. Okay, obviously on a board, you can't do that.
We're not Perth Diving Academy here.
We're not talking about these guys. Just another.
Or hit them with a spear gun or something.
This what I'm talking about happened in a cave, and so the buddy just they had an argument in the water, and the other guy just turned around, jumped in the car and drove off. And the other guy, they actually carpooled. He left them in the cave. So that's actually pretty bad. Yeah, you don't want this on a boat dive. Obviously, you can't do that because you all get back on the same boat. And you go back to the shore.
But I think we tend to be a bit more collegial than that.
Yeah.
I know, but people get angry. I see people getting angry and go, all right, chill, breathe, think it through, and we're going to talk about it in 5-10 minutes. So people need to settle. And like,
At the pub afterwards.
even there,
Have a
like,
coffee.
have a beer and then talk about that. I had like instances where I was wrong. You know, it took me maybe a good half hour to realize what I did wrong. It's all right, cool, it was my fault. And we got separated 60 meters, then we had to ascend and do an hour and a half deep on our own, you know, in the Bass Strait, 30 nautical miles offshore. That was my scariest dive to date. Because I was drifting along on my SMB on my own, not knowing what's going on. Like, is the boat waiting for me or are they chasing the other SMB? You know, I had no idea. And so, like, it took me time, that I'm talking from personal experience, so it takes time to process these sort of things, you know. And so, what I'm saying is, if you're angry or something happened in the water, take it easy, breathe, and then share. But it's important to talk about it. And I guess quite often the boat captain goes, all right, guys, what did you enjoy after the dive? And like everyone shares what they loved about it and what they have to work on in coming through. And then you pass on this feedback, and as a club, as a group, you get all this and say, all right, guys, from now on, we, like you said, signaling device. I want every diver to have a signaling device different than SMB. Because SMBs are useless if you're 50 meters plus away from the boat.
Or if it's underwater.
Or if it's underwater. Yeah.
From 4
Well,
meters blind.
yeah,
when,
this was something
when we lost Elodie the other day, luckily we both had torches and we're shining around looking for her in 2 meters viz.
Not even. Yeah.
We couldn't even see each other.
You can't see a head, you can't see an SMB,
Yeah.
you can't see a torch, except every, you
I
know, once
think
every
torch, that discussion we had, torch is more valuable than SMB on the surface. Obviously, you have to show an SMB to show where you are. But once you get to the surface, you have a torch and you're so far away, they can't see your SMB. If there was like the swell was decent that day, yeah.
I just think
Sorry, I was gonna say, I had an incident on a drift dive where we were just very, very lucky to get picked up. It was just a fluke, and I now carry a PLB, but with GPS 406 satellite, it's effectively an ePerf.
Yeah.
So as long as I get to the surface, I know I can just hit it, and yeah, it will alert, hit the satellite, and I'll be found.
On that issue, how many people are wearing Garmin's or Apple Watches as a backup? Yeah.
I just use the
I'm not an Apple fan.
I've tested it, it works. So I rang someone from the service just to test it,
Oh,
because it's
okay.
new.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious because I was,
So hang on, so you can ring from you.
I was like, call mom.
that's
Can you hear me?
Were
Yeah,
you in reception for this, yeah?
yeah.
But what do you call a reception?
a good
Oh.
point. That's a good point. I'd never thought of it from that use.
Yeah.
At most places we dive, we have reception.
And look, it's muffled, but I can go straight to emergency services
Yeah.
if I want.
You can
and
go direct to
it's-
satellite.
Yeah. I did look at the PLBs, like I've got an ARC PLB, which I use bushwalking and stuff, but to carry that is
Well,
quite big.
this is tiny.
Is that the InReach?
Really, it's the smallest.
The Garmin InReach?
It's called Rescue Me.
Okay, yep.
It's tiny. It will be less than half the size of this glass, and I
Yeah,
put in
right.
a little capsule and
Yeah.
fits easily in my PC.
What's the
Yeah.
depth rate on this thing?
For that, it's 15 meters, but I put it in a capsule
Oh,
to
okay.
make it, and it's
Yeah.
it's. And I never dive without it. You can take a bushwalking, but seriously, it's less than this fist. It'd be half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I was getting the Garmin InReach, which is quite small, but then it's just another thing on me. And now this logs
Right.
all the exercise I'm doing.
It's
So-
like a valuable piece of equipment because while I carry it, I know that I can be found.
Oh, okay. Is this a Garmin?
So,
No.
Can I just segue to you? Diving where most commonly I dive at the heads. I'll take my divers to the heads because I just love it, the water around there, but the currents can be extreme. And on more than one occasion, I've had divers drift off the designated and agreed dive mark because the currents build up earlier than they expected. And getting back to that, not seeing the SMB in the sun thing we discussed earlier, that can be an issue. And just 2 months ago, I had a pair of divers 500 meters away, and I could just hear the tiniest little squeak of a voice in the distance because we weren't looking that way. When the 45 minutes were up, we're expecting, the tide hasn't really changed much. We're expecting they're in the same spot. Anyway, if they had an auditory device, I think that would make a big difference, which is my segue to Angus.
I'm going to talk about that. So,
Do you want to sit here for a second, Angus? Because then you'll have that on the.
to build on it, who knows what these are?
Hey, it's Jack here. I'm just curious. Don't people have a whistle on their BCD anyway?
No, not all.
Oh, right.
This thing I do just cut it off.
Not yet.
That's it. So
Did you get?
one of the things, Andrew, hi everyone. One of the things Andrew's championing is a storm whistle. A storm whistle's a lot better than that little pissy whistle you get with your BCD. These things go like 400 meters. You can hear them 10 meters underwater. They are so loud. And what we've managed to do is get these storm whistles at a really good price. Now, normally they're up around the $20 to $25 if you go buy them. You get them for $5. So it is really something worthwhile. It's small enough. We've got quite a few for the club, and I think Andrew wants to make it more appropriately that we all have one in the club. And for $5, I'd be chucking this in either attaching it to my BCD or whatever. One of the key things I do on, like we were talking about this earlier on, is I used to wear integrated weights. I no longer do that. I actually use those pockets for me to hold emergency kit, one of which is one of these whistles. The others, it's got a board and a pencil, so I can write a note. And the third thing on the back of that board is I've glued a mirror to it. So I can sit there and I can, if the swell's not too bad, I can use my other friend or my finger, my hand to line up the mirror onto my hand and flash the boat. So that's another little thing that you can do rather than use those weight belts, unless you have BCD or you've got a separate type arrangement. That's what I do, how I run my safety. On top of this, in discussions with BlackRock, the new version 2 personal locator devices, we might remember the old Nautilus ones that used to be satellite and everything. Well, they don't get a lot of those functions are now gone out of it. But one of the things that they've now done is they've bought an emergency distress, which goes through to Coast Guard and through all of the emergency distress signal. No GPS. They don't have GPS, but they have they have another button which the club and the BlackRock are now starting to use themselves. Is you can get a closed user group. So what that means is that VSAG, we can have our own closed user group, and if someone gets separated from it, it reports via the radio or GPS radio where they are. So it's just something different.
What's the device?
It's a Nautilus, the new version 2 Nautilus. So that's something that the club can also consider if they wanted to do that. So you get your own private use. So that means that in Andrew's situation where divers get detached, they can press the Nautilus. So every boat within that is a club boat will see where that person actually is. So, and I've actually asked the guys if they'd come and demonstrate it. We'll talk about it one night with us. So just about that capability. Now they're not cheap. Nautiluses are not cheap, and they're quite bulky. So I'm always keen, I'm kind of like Stu's idea of something smaller, but it doesn't give us that closed user group.
I have 2 Nautiluses, and neither of them, they're PLBs.
Yeah.
The DSC that you're talking about, you can hit a button and it will send a pre-coded message.
Yeah.
And it will get picked up by any ship. Potentially, you can have a closed group.
Yeah.
If you just use your DSC, it'll get picked up by any ship within 50 nautical miles, as long as it is or has a unit capable of getting it. So you will set it off. It's the same size as my EPIRB, and it might be more convenient if there's a ship within 50 miles or whatever, and they know what to do with it. But I'm going to stick with the same size EPIRB because that goes to a satellite, and I know someone's going to fire me 100%. I've got a little Nautilus that has a VHF radio on it, which
that was the very first version.
And I've got the other ones with the DSC and things. But for me, you just never know, and I'm not leaving it to chance, vessel owners or anything. I want a satellite to know where I am and just send everything.
It's all about de-risking, and it's what tolerance, you know, what tolerance you can, like $5, everyone in the club should have one
Has
of
it been
these.
tested underwater?
So,
So
yeah.
just raise, sorry.
Water,
Yeah.
we bought a batch of them a few years back.
Okay.
Awesome.
So ours are even better. They're newly improved because they are Chinese knockoffs, and you know what they say is for them to copy something, you've got to change 3 things. Ours comes with a temperature gauge, so you'll know how cold you are in the water. You also have a compass to work out where they.
Where you are.
I've got this black, good-looking line here. So, but other than, and it's got a ball in it, which the other one doesn't have. But needless to say, I tested in the backyard, and yeah, let's say the neighbours came out when I blew it as hard as I could.
I put earmuffs on to test mine, and I'm glad I had the earmuffs on.
So yeah, so.
Because we were talking human factors at the start of this meeting, one of the things of human factors in diving, and that what Gareth Locke is trying to get across, is that we make diving safer. What can we do to make our diving safer? Now, some really good points have been raised. So maybe, probably the committee, maybe we need to develop a standard operating procedure for our boat diving, so that we start, you know, SMBs have to be a particular configuration. We carry whistles, just so that there's a consistency. We know better, and I'm not trying to say.
I was just sort of saying, what is your preparedness list?
Yeah,
I do.
to minimise, you know, to minimise that risk.
I'm not certain. I know Peter Galvin, and I've got one on the boats. We have it just for hooker diving and just general sort of preparedness. Now, I'm not certain whether that's sitting on the VSAG website under our documentation area, but I will have a look and later on let you know, or anyone who's near our website who could do a task swap. But there is some guides about, you know, have you got this? Because we've had a few incidents in the past, and it gets back to this openness and sharing. The people have jumped in the water with the hooker on without the weight belt. Now, you work it out pretty quickly. You're not going to go down without a weight belt, but nonetheless, it's just to help remove the errors. And as we want to be able to do is safely discuss this as rational humans, not to persecute and say, well, you can't dive at the pub or whatever. It's serious. Like, it is a serious business for what we do, and if you do it correctly, it is a very safe sport. So
I have a boat specific policy that everyone's going to have a whistle from now on my boat. It's just where I dive, where I take people, I want everyone to have a whistle. So I'm going to I'll buy a heap of these. You can buy them from the gift shop at VSAG for $5. Also for sale for $10 on my boat. So please yourself, buy it anywhere you like.
That's fair enough.
And I think that might end up being a policy anyway, because I think that, you know, reinforces that we really do need these.
It's been too many near misses for me.
Yeah.
Like dry at the heads, divers going off the mark and not deploying the SMB early enough. They don't realise how far they've moved. And so it's important enough to me that I won't allow anyone in the water anymore off my boat without a whistle.
One of the things Gareth championed was checklists. He started the high risk process in the RAF. And at that time they didn't have any sort of checklists and things. So now they've got, I don't know, hundreds of things they have to check off. And I think it's a great idea because it's just so easy to forget to do something. And this includes having a whistle or your SMB or whatever else.
Do your belt up.
All those sorts of things, just having a list to go through.
Mm.
Because once again, if you're task loaded, you can easily forget. And just it's a separate thing. I sometimes swim with icebergs. One of the people there did a rip swim course 2 weeks ago. I don't know if anyone heard about this. There were 17 participants and 3 kayakers taken out by professionals down near the heads to teach them how to swim the rip. They all went straight through the heads and were picked up by separate emergency services. Some of the swimmers were 2 k's outside the heads, just by themselves.
Yeah.
Just with their budgie smugglers and a pair of goggles. Now, that's frightening.
Oh, lucky.
It is, yeah.
They found all 17.